Michael Jacobi here, host of Talk of the Town. Welcome to what's going to be a marvelous show. Today we'll be talking baseball, and with my apologies in advance to the composer Terry Cashman, who wrote that iconic tune, we won't be Willie, Mickey, and the Duke today. We'll be Mikey, Jeffy, and Gene, and you'll understand in just a second. With me, Gene Fruth. Welcome.
Thank you.
Delighted to have you. See, I said Fruth and it's Fruth.
It is. It is. I just went with it though.
And Jeff Idelson, how are you, buddy?
Good to see you, Michael.
See you. I was saying, all I thought of all day was pronouncing your name correctly, and I screwed it up coming out of the gate.
You won't be the only one. Or the last.
Going to give you some real quick background. You folks are with Grassroots Baseball. You are one of the most prominent baseball photographers, I think, in the Western Hemisphere. Can we say that?
Well, thank you.
Jeff, you were formerly the president of the Hall of Fame in Cooperstown.
This is true.
So baseball certainly runs in both of your bloods, and all of your bloods, and mine as well. That having been said, I imagine that you would agree with me that we need to give kudos to Major League Baseball for somehow getting through this year. What do you think of the season?
I give them a lot of credit. It wasn't easy. You had basketball and hockey going to the bubble. Baseball attempted to do it outside of the bubble, and abbreviated season, but it gave a lot of hope for people and some enjoyment over the course of a couple of months.
What did you think? You did a lot of photography in empty stadiums.
I did. Photographing this season was certainly like no other, and I agree. Kudos to Major League Baseball for pulling it off and shooting in empty stadiums, racial injustices, demonstrations, everything that was happening in our world that was also affecting, so much was happening really off the field. And I sat amongst the cardboard cutouts, all my new friends, and shot in different stadiums.
You like two-dimensional men, so it worked out fine.
It was fine, yeah. And the parking was great, by the way.
Yeah,
it was,
indeed.
Yeah,
indeed.
But it was certainly an unusual season, and also, in California we had the day that the sun didn't come up, and there was a game that was played on Mars at AT&T.
During the fires, yeah. And there's a marvelous photograph that there's a street called Mars, and there was a picture of the sky that color and Mars in the front around the street, the foreground.
It was
street sign.
Yeah.
It was amazing.
It was at Oracle. I still say AT&T, but I mean we had thick ash coming down and red, fire behind us and smoke, and they played that game, and it was like nothing I've seen before.
Well, Mama said there'd be days like this. She didn't say there'd be years like this, and to have gotten through with all the craziness is a miracle. Certainly, granted, they had their way with some rules, and it wasn't necessarily traditional baseball, but it was great. And I think, Jeff, you made a very good point, not only as a fan, but as a follower of the game, is that it was good for the American public to be able to do that.
I think so, and it gave baseball in kind of an interesting way a chance to experiment. 7-inning doubleheaders, runner on second base to start the extra innings. Relief pitcher having to face 3 batters. So, and the DH in both leagues. So baseball, in some ways, really did well in experimenting and seeing what they want to do going forward.
Now, of those new rules, hopefully some of them won't keep or won't stay. The DH is going to stay now, right? Next year.
I don't think they voted yet, but I'd be stunned if it doesn't get voted in both leagues.
You don't see the 7-inning doubleheader happening.
I don't.
Well,
I don't think so.
Although doubleheaders, went the way of college wooden bats, it just doesn't happen. And the man on second, that's not likely to hapen.
That may stay.
Oh, geez, I don't like that.
I loved that one.
Do you? Wow. It's certainly, that's because you've got to get to your car. Make a deadline. You haven't got time. I remember being at Candlestick in the old days where if you stayed at an extra inning night game, you got what was called a crow to candlestick. You got a pin. Of course, they have to stick it on your dead body. I used to be there in down jackets, and I said, I can't take it.
The wind was brutal.
It was unbelievable.
Yeah.
Talk about a little bit, Jeff, about President of the Hall of Fame. But you had a long trek throughout baseball that was the road that got you there. Talk a little bit about your background and where you grew up.
Yeah, I grew up in the Boston area and loved baseball early in life. I kept score games on the radio. My dad would bring home legal yellow pads, and I'd make my own scorecards. And then from there, I had the fortune of becoming a vendor at Fenway Park, so I got to go and be at the ballpark and
Here.
Yeah, I was a little young for that, and at Fenway they don't sell beer in the stands for obvious reasons, but. But I just always felt a love for baseball, and as I was getting into my senior year of college at Connecticut College, my career advisor said, well, what are you going to do with your life? You're an economics major. And I said, I have no idea. And she said, well, what do you like? I said, I like baseball. She said, well, apply for a job in baseball. So it was like never dawned on me. And so I reached out to the Red Sox because I had grown up in Boston, and I was fortunate enough to get an internship 5 days after I graduated in 1986. And I immediately knew I was comfortable in the ballpark. Ended up spending 8 years at the team level, 3 in Boston, and then I went to a team I grew up despising, the Yankees, and spent 5 years with the Yankees and ended up very happy there. And then Cooperstown came calling, and 25 years at the Hall of Fame.
Wow. Started as a 16-year-old, which is a nice thing. Now, was your dad, you grew up a Boston fan?
Yes.
So you went through the drought.
Oh, yes.
Was your dad alive when they won?
My dad was not alive when they won, so unfortunately my mom was, and both of my parents were big baseball fans, and it just, when you go through that kind of a long period of like never winning, when it's like all of a sudden the sun came out, and it brought a lot of joy to people in Boston.
There is a wonderful segment, I don't remember what show it was on, it might have been Real Sports with Brian Gumbel, and I'll try to tell this without getting verklempt, but there was, when the Red Sox won, maybe I can't, but when the Red Sox won, they went to, there was a guy climbing over a wall of the cemetery, and the cop stopped him, he says, and he was embarrassed, and he goes, it's okay. He's turned his light on, and there were hundreds of people in the cemetery with candles.
Yeah, that's what it meant. That's what it meant to people, Michael. It was pretty amazing as it meant to the people in Chicago when the Cubs finally won.
And will someday mean to the people in Tampa Bay.
It will. They haven't had that long to wait yet, but they make the most of what they have.
Well, we met when you were at the Hall of Fame, and you and I have talked about this on my radio show. Folks, if you have a bucket list and this isn't on it, although my bucket list is added going to a movie and eating inside a restaurant, which is wrong. But if going to Cooperstown and going to the Hall of Fame isn't on it, you're missing something. Because it is not, even if the museum wasn't there, and I think you'll agree, Gene, it's the best town in the world. It is so hip. One stoplight, right? Greatest donuts in the world. All the merchants or all the stores have baseball themes, like there's line drives and lipsticks. It's great. And they make the bats there. And if you ever get a chance, and I can't pronounce the name of the lake. What is that?
Otsego Lake.
Otsego Lake. It's just beautiful.
Yeah, it's a town of 1,800, one stoplight, as you mentioned, and it's almost like driving into a Rockwell painting. That's how I felt living there. So. And then when you go to the Hall of Fame, you go there expecting the past, and invariably you find your own past, which makes it very rewarding.
It is marvelous. You grew up Dodger fan?
Mets fan.
Mets
New York
fan.
City.
You grew up on the East Coast, right?
Yep, New York City. My family was more of a hockey family than a baseball family, but my grandfather was a Mets fan, and we always rooted for the underdogs. We were Ranger fans.
Well, that's a good you being a Mets fan.
And then fast forward to Northern California, I was a portrait photographer and started coaching my son's rookie ball team. Had a nice portrait business with 2 ladies, all black and white film, and that was really thriving. But I really wasn't what I wanted to do in photography. It was just what I landed in. And
now, as a young woman, did you have an epiphany? Somebody gave you an old Canon, or how did your fascination with photography start?
I was interested in darkroom work. That was what I loved, and it was I had a darkroom in my high school, and we took
So
a
this was
class.
prior to the whole digital thing.
This is before digital, so it was film, and I love the idea of printing. So that's really what I thought my path was going to be. And when I approached these two ladies, and they had this wonderful business, and they had all kinds of beautiful paper they were printing on, so I started printing their work for them in exchange for being able to work for them and shoot with them and learn from them. And it ended up becoming a great partnership, but I wanted to move out of portrait photography, and I just wasn't sure what. So I was taking classes and trying to figure out what the path was going to be. Sent photos
Were
in.
you taking a lot of photos of your kids playing ball?
Yeah, so I mean, I wasn't really much of a coach. So Little League called me. I was coaching rookie ball, and it was going to be a one and done. I was
love it.
rookie
You're
ball.
coaching rookie ball.
Yeah, I was coaching rookie ball. Yeah, and Little League called me and said, "Would you?" Be interested in coaching with us next year?" And I said, "Well, my son's too young to be in Little League next year, and I'm not much of a coach." And they said, "No, we'll take him, and we need women coaches. We're trying to get more moms involved." And I thought, well, that's a good cause. And I said, and they said they'd put me with experienced coaches. They put me with great coaches, and I really enjoyed it, and I learned a lot, and I wasn't over my head because there was always experienced people around. And they let me photograph, and I shot everything and sent photos in of all-star games to the paper. And they called and asked me if I'd shoot other sports, including high school and college football. So I started working for the local papers. They had 5 newspapers, and off I went. And I fell in love with. I was actually very bad at photographing football. I thought I was going to be good.
I want to explore this a little more. We're going to take a quick break. You're watching Talk of the Town. Our guests, Gene Fruth and Jeff Idelson. We'll be back in just a second. Keep jazz alive. Hi, I'm Michael Jacobi, executive producer of Jazz on the Plaz, with that simple request. It has been said that 1,000 years from now, 3 things will be remembered about America: the Constitution, baseball, and jazz music. Throughout this most difficult of summers, we have produced Jazz Off the Plaz, a series of live streaming concerts, keeping musicians working and the community comforted with music in the safety of their own homes. And we've done it all through private donations from people like you. Yet, like so many nonprofits these days, we are facing an uncertain future. For 17 years, we have been here for you. Today, we're asking you to be here for us. Jazz was born of struggle and is played in celebration. The struggle has never been more apparent, and the celebration never more needed. Please donate to the Los Gatos Music and Arts Emergency Fund and help keep jazz alive. And welcome back to Talk of the Town. Jacobi with you on this day when we're talking baseball, celebrating our national pastime, which was certainly something that was a welcome diversion for all of us this year, as so many things end up being. Of course, the way things are going, I'm like, well, a pencil. Yeah, diversions are what they are. With Gene Fruth, I did it again. Fruth.
I didn't hear it.
Fruth.
Oh, yeah.
Gene Fruth. You will remember her name by the time we're done with the show. And Jeff Idelson. We were talking before the break about photography, and you're saying you weren't a good football photographer. How important is knowing the game?
Oh, it's extremely important. And I thought I knew the game, but not really.
Yeah.
And I called my friend, my good friend who actually just died, Baron Woolman, the first photographer for Rolling Stone magazine. And
Who was a good friend of a mutual friend of ours, Jim Marshall.
Yes, exactly. And yeah, the three amigos were Jim Marshall, Baron Woolman, and the 49ers photographer and Oakland A's photographer Michael Zagaris. And Baron Woolman introduced me to Michael Zagaris, and he is still the Oakland A's photographer and the 49ers photographer. And Baron said, "You need to talk to my friend Michael, who's called Z-Man." That's his nickname. And Z-Man is a legend. He also shot tons of rock and roll, and he's just as much a rock and roll photographer as he is a sports photographer. And I learned the way from Z, and owe a lot to Z for my career and being my mentor.
I should point out that throughout the program, we'll be showing pictures behind us from your book, Grassroots Baseball, which we'll talk more about in the next show. But these marvelous photographs are, of course, all of your photographs.
Thank you.
That you have taken over the years. Jeff, the Hall of Fame, is there a photographic wing or angle or exhibition at the Hall of Fame?
Well, the great thing about photography is it's storytelling. So there's photography throughout the museum.
Right.
There's not a section there's a section that talks about some of the pioneers and has some of the equipment, the older cameras, but the photography, which is incredible, going all the way back to the 19th century, is throughout.
Yeah. And who was the photographer that took the picture of Babe Ruth from the other side? You know that story where Ruth, he's taking it from his back, Ruth's back. You see the number 3 and him leaning on the back.
Oh, I'm embarrassed to say I don't know
And
who
he
that
was the
is.
only photographer who went to the other side that day in 1935, as everyone was taking a photograph of Babe from the front. And I was trying to think of the
I
name
can't
as
think
well.
of it either.
I'm the one who's supposed to
No.
know. We'll have to edit this out
And
completely.
you and I have talked about this, and you've spent time at the Hall, right?
Yes, yeah, I was their traveling photographer.
Jeff and I have talked about this because I have some ideas that I think should be added.
Nat Fine.
Not fine, you're right.
Yeah,
Nat
he
Fine
won a Pulitzer for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One of my ideas, there should be an exhibit called Angels in the Outfield about all the great charity events players have done, where they've given back things to the community and things like that. And not that he hasn't thought of it, but also there should be something, there should be something on the great speeches that are given, induction speeches, because there's so many gems on that.
The speeches are great.
Oh, they are.
Yeah,
They are.
yeah.
But as you say, what is it like many museums? What is it? 1% is on display.
Oh yeah, no, probably about 10% of what the Hall of Fame has in its collections are on display. So close to 50,000 artifacts, 3 million pieces in the library there, and you can only put on a small amount at each time. And what's good about that is that you're constantly rotating, so you can tell different stories, and at the same time you're protecting the life of the artifacts.
I have an old friend of mine named Paul Spangler, who was vice president of golf at Pebble Beach, and when he was growing up, his dad owned a liquor distribution company in Hawaii. So I said, my God, have you had a great life? I said, how on earth can you leave that life? And that having been said, being the president of the Hall of Fame, what made you decide to move on?
Funny you should ask.
Funny I should.
I was thinking about retiring. I had been there for 25 years, and I had been admiring Jean's work and as a traveling photographer for the Hall of Fame and what she was doing, especially with the grassroots level of baseball. And she put together this fabulous book, and I helped her reach out to the Hall of Famers, the idea she had of tying the Hall of Famers back to the region. And she knew I was getting ready to retire, and she said, what do you think about maybe turning this into a not-for-profit? And I said to myself, man, that could be a lot of fun. I mean, the fact of going back and getting involved in the grassroots game again. And I said, I'd really like to do that. I'd like to really think about that and do that. And I'd like to take a month off first and sit on a beach or look at a wall or just have a few minutes to myself. And she said, take all the time you want to think about it. And then I get a call the next day saying, how about starting on Route 66 next week?
Are you coming or not?
I said, okay.
What do you miss most? You got to miss the town.
The town is great.
You live in the city now, right?
I do live in the city,
A little bit
and
of different traffic pattern.
it sure is. There's more than one traffic light, more than 1,800 people. But living there was very unique, and being able to get around quickly. But I have the relationship still with the Hall of Famers, which is the most important to me, and those I've known for so long, and those will never go away.
Oh, in this last month or so, it's been brutal.
Yeah, we lost, the Hall of Fame lost 5 players in 5 weeks, and 6 overall in 2020 with Al Kaline passing in April.
Yeah.
Really tough.
Unbelievable. So then how long were you, when you went to work for the Hall of Fame, was he there already?
Yeah, he was there, and my tenure was over, it was almost 3.5, 4 years of, and I wasn't, the only time I was shooting in Cooperstown was during their classic game and then induction, because they have a full-time photographer there. So I was their backup photographer just for those events, and loved covering induction. My first induction was actually Ricky Henderson, and that was before I was
He's a pal of yours.
Love him. Yeah, you talked about speeches, and I immediately thought about Ricky's speech and how wonderful that speech was. But it gave me a wonderful opportunity to tie the contemporary game to the history of the game, and that was the job, was to shoot the contemporary game around the world, really, and then tell the stories, how they tie back into history, and it really made me a better storyteller. So the Hall of Fame really shaped my photography.
Stating the obvious, I think the shared history of baseball that we all have is what brings us together at so many levels. My dad and I couldn't talk about anything, but we talked baseball. And when my son, who you know, when we're not arguing, we're talking baseball. So it is a market. Did you have that relationship as well? Did you play ball as a kid?
No, I didn't play ball. I had a kind of a serious upbringing where there was a lot of turmoil in my family. So I was out pretty early. At 16, I was on my own. So life started pretty quickly for me, and serious life started fast. But the connecting generations is what I love, and it's what brings my son and
cultures, which is what you're finding, which you may have known, but you're showing in the book Grassroots Baseball, from the Dominican Republic to Cuba to Central America. It's amazing, and we will talk more about that in the next program. I want to talk just a second more about the Hall of Fame, and we're going to move on. You and I have had many conversations, Jeff, on the radio, talking about baseball, and I remember when you left, there was something controversial that was going on, and I think it was with DraftKings or something. And you finally said, "Well, I don't have to be neutral anymore," and you said something to me that you're very concerned about the gambling aspect of baseball.
Yeah, again, just really, you don't want to corrupt the game at any level. Unfortunately, it doesn't appear that it has been corrupted by gambling, but it sure is easy, and it's what took the game down once before 100 years ago. And not to suggest that everything has to function today like it did 100 years ago, but it's, there's enough money involved that it concerned me as a fan.
Oh, and I know why we were talking about it, because the Astros and the stealing signs, that thing.
Right.
And but now if you're a good pitcher, I don't care if you have a drug problem, if you're a good manager, you come back and work. So
we're a country that forgives.
Anyway, I'm delighted to have these two here, and we're going to do another show coming up after this to talk specifically about the book and the book that's in stages of developing, even as I speak. Talk more about this sport that we all love. And you play golf?
I don't.
You don't. Now, he and I play golf, but not together. But it's the thing that you can hold on
not
to
yet.
when you can't make it to third, but at least you can play a little golf. Thank you for joining us, for joining Talk of the Town. We're delighted to be back with you. We also want to give a big shout out, although it's been a very, very difficult year for jazz, and certainly for the rest of us in this community. It's the first year we've missed Jazz on the Plaz in 17 years. And we're starting a GoFundMe page because we're desperately in need of your help. It's been said that 1,000 years from now, the three things remembered about this culture will be the Constitution, baseball, and jazz music. And we're just trying to keep jazz alive. It's also been said that jazz was born of struggle and played in celebration. Well, never has a struggle ever been tougher, and a celebration ever more in need. So go to our website, jazzontheplaz.com, if you can, and make a pledge to our GoFundMe. We appreciate it. Till next time, I'm Jacobi. I'll see you soon.